With all of the changes going on in the automotive industry and business in general, especially with supply chain issues and demand being high from the consumer and a lot of times inventory low, how do you adapt your marketing to make sure that just because your inventory is invisible, that your marketing doesn't go invisible as well, that you're playing the long game while you're dealing with some of these short-term problem points? Well, I put that question to 4 powerhouse individuals on today's show. Laurie Halter, she is the owner of Charisma Communications. Sarah Ciociola, she is the director of paid media at PCG Digital. April Simmons, who is the corporate internet and marketing director for the Horne Automotive Group, as well as Hannah Lifson, who is the marketing director for Friendemic. All 4 of them are going to be on a panel at the upcoming Digital Dealer Conference in October. But I wanted to talk to them before they get to that stage about what they're seeing in marketing from the dealer perspective, April, to the vendor perspective, and also from a perspective of training, development, process, changes. There's so many different things that we talk about on this show. I can't wait for you to hear it. So let's dive into today's episode of You're in Charge, Now What, with these 4 powerhouse individuals. All right, so I am very excited. I have some phenomenal questions for you folks today. Now, let's just start right at the top, because at Digital Dealer in this October, you guys are going, all of you are going to be on a panel discussion. And I love the title of it, saying just because your inventory is invisible, your advertising doesn't have to be. But around that, whoever wants to jump in first, when you crafted that title, what are you seeing in terms of people cutting back on advertising or ignoring their advertising, all because of inventory? And why are you so adamant about not stopping advertising no matter what?
Well, I'll start. I think the biggest issue that I see is that there's lack of strategy. Dealers as a whole have always been so reactive in their advertising. They wait to the last minute. Oh, shoot, we need to sell cars this weekend. Let's throw a mailer out like last second. And so that reactive approach has now just doesn't work when you don't have inventory. You have to be much more proactive, but that means that you still need to advertise. You just need to have a different strategy, potentially look at your branding strategy, getting a good foundation so that when things do change, you're in a better place to dominate in an organic standpoint. So I think there's a lot of things that dealers should be doing now versus what we have been doing in the past. So that means don't just because the cars aren't here, this is not the time to say, whoa, stop everything, because when you need to be moving, it'll be too late.
So to that point then, when you said that, what popped into my head is, well, then who's responsible for the strategy? Right? They may not have someone in the dealership, or maybe they do. A lot of times the marketing person is the lonely person in the dealership, meaning a lot of people don't understand what they do or what they're trying to accomplish. So who owns this strategy? It's easy to say, well, you should have a new strategy. Who owns it?
Well, I think speed of the leader, speed of the troops. So it just, first and foremost, the general manager should be saying, hey, if they're not the expert or they don't have the time, they should be determining who that person is or who those people are. Typically, it should be multiple people. You want to bring somebody in from fixed ops, you want to bring somebody in from sales, typically even somebody from finance, get everybody involved, and then have a group of people that are really working together to have a cohesive plan for the entire dealership.
Okay, so Laurie, to that point, a lot of times that all sounds good, but it's hard to get everyone to the table. Number 2 is a lot of times they'll say, well, if I'm not the expert, I'm just going to hire an expert and then let them do that. So for you, it seems like what April's saying is easy. Let's get in and bring everyone in. But if they don't feel comfortable, what should they be doing then to alleviate any of this disconnect between departments or marketing concepts and their strategy?
No, it's a great question, because I think especially as vendors, it's easy for us to say, I mean, April's a dealer, and she's just ahead of the curve and innovative, but the rest of us are vendors, and it's easy to say, don't stop, don't stop. But I think one of the things we're going to really hit on during this panel is something we call make the money matter. And so the way to get the people at the table, we're not saying don't pull back at all. That's just unrealistic. People should be probably pulling back right now on certain things. But we're saying come together as a team and be strategic about what is mattering the most. What in your marketing, PR, branding, social media is bringing in the most return? And can you reevaluate and redistribute dollars to that, to really use this time when others are pulling back to pull ahead and be that much further when inventory comes back?
So it's a more reallocation than it is stopping.
Yeah, no, we're saying don't stop by any means, but definitely get your team to the table, train. I know April's a big advocate of training correctly, strategize together, analyze what's working, and put more money, redistribute, and make sure that you're putting money where it's working right now.
Okay. So Sarah, with that, for all disclosure, Sarah and I work together. So that's, we want to keep that very above board. But so in this, what are you seeing that's working, right? And I like what you guys are, talking about on the panel when you say make your money matter. And I absolutely agree, meaning the more efficient you can become, more targeted. And to April's point, I think a lot of times it is very reactive of just either do what we've always done or wait to the last minute and then panic. So what are you seeing that's working? And especially around this idea of lack of inventory, how are our customers reallocating resources?
Yeah, so I think what's definitely working best right now for dealers is just that full funnel marketing strategy. And what happens when inventory is low or people are pressuring, like April said, we have to sell cars this weekend, dealers throw branding totally out the door. And what I like to tell our dealers is that, you can't get leads and run lead generation advertising if you're not starting at the top of the funnel. There's no way you're ever going to get to the bottom of the funnel if you're not starting at the top. So consistently running branding campaigns, consistently running traffic campaigns, and then always having an evergreen dynamic campaign running, whether you're on the Google side, the social side, whatever social platform you're even using, that always supersedes cutting the branding and cutting the middle of the funnel and going straight to the bottom of the funnel, because then dealers are asking, well, where are our leads? And I'm like, well, no, we're not gathering anybody to get to the bottom of the funnel to generate those leads for you, because we're missing all of these people who are still in the beginning phases of buying a car, the consideration phase of buying a car. They're not ready to buy a car right now. And you're missing the potential to capture all of these people and gather all of this data. So in months from now, you can retarget them and they can become leads, and your competition is doing that. So making sure too that you're, considering what your competition is doing, because if you're not ahead of your competition, then you're just always going to fall behind.
Well, and I love that, because that's like, you're talking 3 to 6 months ahead of the funnel at that point, right? The folks that are just still kind of researching. And so inventory may very well be back on lots 6 months from now. And you're just that much better off, 6 months from now.
So Hannah, for you with your company, how does it fit into this whole ecosystem, right? So April, frontline, and I agree, very forward thinking. Sarah's talking about the marketing aspect, but for your company that's helping dealers, where do you fit, and what's the impact that you're having in this retention? Because I think yours is really a retention piece in marketing, but a lot of people don't think about it that way. So talk a little bit about how yours can help in this idea of advertising to retain customers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, it's not so much advertising as it is just marketing as a whole. And Sarah was mentioning that funnel where it's that 3 to 6 month where people are potentially even just making their decisions. I think that's where a lot of my findings and insights are going to be shared on the panel. We're talking about, the original form of advertising or the original form of marketing, which is just word of mouth. But what is that like sort of in a digital perspective? It's all online reviews. It's how are consumers talking about you? It's how are you building that brand one-to-one, one at a time, as your consumers are trying to connect with you and form those relationships online. Through the pandemic, some of us were ahead of the curve like April and had some strategies in place, but a lot of dealers, even our clients, were sort of thrown into this saying, how am I going to connect? How am I going to maintain that presence and be top of mind, stay top of mind? Well, I'll tell you what, it was through star reviews, specifically on Google. It was being able to connect one-to-one on video. And of course, as we all know, it was being able to post on social media. Happy customers, what do we actually have on inventory, giving them updates in real life, in real time. So that's some of the insights that I'll be sharing on the panel.
That's great. So then we're all going to come back to you, April, from the dealer perspective. Why are we so all or nothing? Meaning running to one side of the boat, so for instance, reviews, for a while they were very important and everybody was obsessed with them. And now they're sort of, they're there, or we have to be reminded about it, or certain social media, well, we're all going to run to this side of the boat, or, well, now that we don't have inventory, we can't advertise our inventory, or this idea of marketing who you are, regardless of the car, from a branding perspective, who are you in the community, doesn't seem to have that weight. So talk about it from your challenges, getting that consistency or belief that all of it is necessary. And yes, like Laurie said, you might pull a lever here or there, or dial it up or dial it down. But why do we still consistently just, everything or nothing?
Really easy answer to that. Most dealers don't. I believe in the philosophy of facts, not feelings, right? And most dealers go off of feelings. So a lot of what dealers decide to do or not do has to do with what they feel something is. So I feel like this mailer was really successful because I saw two people have it in their hand. I feel like this was a failure because I didn't physically see a lead name attached to a lead in my CRM. I feel like, so people make decisions based on feelings and what they think the outcome was, rather than looking at the facts and the data of what the outcomes are. So if you can have somebody, whether it's an internal person or a vendor who is there genuinely just to help you through that process of being able to strategize based on fact, then you can get ahead of this. But where we make the majority of our mistakes is by going what our gut tells us rather than what we know to be true.
So then to that point, then what, it seems like that fact finding can be a little overwhelming for dealers. You have multiple vendors coming at you with multiple reports, and everyone's claiming they're the reason why that your success is there. As we always joke, if everybody says they sold those 100 cars, and in theory I have 10 people telling me I should sell 1,000 cars, but I don't. So how does, for anyone on the panel, how can we, or how can the vendor side get better at that to help people understand not all marketing works every time 100%. There are moving, some marketing is designed to move people through the funnel. So it's helping. And you also can't just put your finger on it and say, well, that's the only reason they came in was because they saw the ad there and they're great and everyone else is horrible. So it's an interesting topic. So what do you guys think about that?
I'm going to tell you the number one thing that has to stop is this, right? Like the vendors cannot say, hey, I'm the only reason that you're successful or not.
Right.
And stop. The other thing I really won't allow is if you want to have your own view as a vendor in my Google Analytics, fine, but I'm not going to use that view. So I highly suggest that you make sure that you're looking and showing reports to a dealer based on the dealer's view so that it's a true apples to apples comparison. And then if you really want to be a dealer partner, then help educate the dealer, sit down with them and say, hey, yeah, maybe this particular vendor has a high bounce rate, but maybe the goal of that campaign was to just get the clicks, right? So it depends on what the goal of the campaign is. And if you're seeing a dealer having some struggles, don't be afraid to educate them. And that's, I've learned everything through vendors. When I first started, I just asked a lot of questions. I pulled everybody in. I went to conferences and things, but ultimately it was the vendors who helped. And if vendors were more proactive about trying to help their dealer partners, I think we'd all be in a lot better shape.
That's a great point. So Laurie, you're a little different.
Yeah. In numerous ways.
That's just a statement. Then we can move on. No, I wanted to clarify because you're not really
dealer
selling a product.
Right.
Well, you're not dealer. You're not selling a product or a service, so to speak, like an agency. So you actually are sometimes in that position to help orchestrate the madness for your clients. So what do you see, or why do you think so many vendors don't want to play nice in the sandbox or help collaborate? It still is that me. What, so again, you have a different perspective.
I always say that's such a great question. I don't think I've ever been asked that. So bravo. But no, I think that happens a lot. And I work with a lot of vendors in the space. And so what I talk to them about helping the clients is exactly what April's saying. Always strive to be an advocate of your clients or your dealers. So ask them, what do they need information about? What are they looking to find out? And like, instead of throwing a report that shows the best of what you're doing for them, what are they trying to understand? And the other thing I think that happens a lot with vendors, the reason, as you're saying, there's a bunch of chest beating and I think they're very afraid that, like, if we're using one of April's examples, let's say there's a high bounce rate. They're afraid at the negative aspect of that. But if you can explain why it was a negative bounce rate, or why it's okay that this was a negative bounce rate because it wasn't really the goal of that. The goal was overall exposure. What I found is most of my clients and most of their clients, who are the dealers, are okay with that. They just need to know the why behind all of these numbers and what's going on. They're looking for you to partner with them. And like exactly what April was saying, explain and educate them. So I think a lot of vendors just kind of give the reports that show the best. Whereas if we're just a little more authentic, we're a little more truthful, I think that's going to go a much further way with these guys.
No, and I think that's great. And Sarah, I think that, that's one of the hallmarks of what we try to accomplish. But, I think there are people who want to collaborate. I just think also some vendors were never asked to collaborate. So, no one's thought about it. So Sarah, for you, where do you see when we bring on clients or we're discussing, or you're meeting dealers out at conferences, because now you're on the the speaking circuit, so to speak, and you're hearing some of their frustrations? What are some of the frustrations that they're having with their marketing partners? Some of the things dealers are bringing up.
Yeah, it goes right back to what Laurie and April just said about education. So when we bring on a dealer at PCG, I always emphasize to my team that we are an extension of their marketing team. We are not silo, we are one unit. And really educating them on how we're going to measure success. So when we have a startup call, when we have strategy calls, and on every reporting call, I say you have to tell them exactly how we're measuring success, because each campaign is measured in a very different way. So if we're just looking at clicks, we're going to fail. If we're just looking at leads, it looks like we're going to fail. If we're just looking at website traffic, it looks like we're failing. Because like I mentioned before, we want to have a full funnel marketing strategy, and every piece of that funnel is measured very differently. The other issue that I find when we talk to dealers, whether it's, our dealers at PCG or when I'm traveling, is that dealers are married to Google Analytics. You cannot measure your social media advertising. You cannot measure, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. That does not transfer well into Google Analytics. They are not Google products. You need to be measuring your social media advertising in the platforms that you're running them. Google Analytics is a great measurement tool, but skilled marketers know that you have to use multiple measurement tools to really get the full picture and for the data to tell a full story. And I think that is something we are going to have to continue as vendors and as marketers to push to dealers.
That's a great point, because I think they're without the education, to what April had said earlier, without that education, you're not going, everyone's going to look at through their own lens or the knowledge that they possess. And then at times you could look like you're failing when in reality you're winning. So Hannah, you've worked in a variety of organizations helping dealers. And again, you have a good bond with dealers. You have an ability to just, chat with them. They're very open with you. So when you hear, like I said, when you hear their frustrations about marketing, about other vendors, how have you been able to help your dealer clients marry some of the products that you've done, because you've worked in a variety of them? How do you help them connect the products you're working with to their other partners? You become a bridge sometimes. And so I really want to understand how you do that, or how you could help dealers who are listening be that bridge to other vendor partners.
Sure. I mean, I think first and foremost, me always being on a marketing team, I can always relate to the dealer that's typically in that position. They're on the marketing side, I'm on the marketing side. So I'm never trying to sell you anything. If you meet me at a conference, I'm not there to pitch you, but if you have questions, I'm there to answer them. But I think the mentality that I've liked and the stance that I've always liked to take is, I didn't sell your car. My product didn't sell your car. You as the dealer sold the car. You know your business better than anybody. And it's probably none of my business to tell you how to run your business. And that kind of mindset and that standpoint has always gone over really well with all of my clients, and quite honestly, most of my friends. April and I are very close friends outside of work. Maybe because I'm not selling or anything, but it's always that mindset that I like to go in with to try to create that bridge. So it's kind of like going on a first date, where if you let the other person just talk about them the entire time and you had a chance to say nothing, they're going to say, wow, this was a great date. And the other person would say, oh my God, I'm never going to talk to that jerk again. And I think that happens a lot in the vendor space. They want to start out their slide deck with, here's a little bit about company X, Y, and Z versus, hey, I took a look at your X, Y, and Z placement on Google, or X, Y, and Z in Google Analytics. I did a little bit of research about you. Here's the pain points I'm seeing. What can I actually help you with? Versus starting to talk about yourself. And again, I've just found that approach to be really approachable. And it's not, it's that partnership theme that you guys are all speaking to. It's that, teaching element that I know everyone on the call here is really an advocate of, and definitely brings to the forefront of whatever company they're behind, or just life in general. So that's sort of where I intermingle. And if I can weave in a product, and I do feel like my company can truly help them, and I can see that pain point where there is the bridge, let's go for it. I'll introduce you to someone who can truly and honestly pitch it and give you the best quality of work. But if I think that there's somebody else in this space, I also don't mind passing you over to my friends who are also a lot of vendors.
No, what I like about that, and again, I like to pull things out of the discussion so that people, we slow down for a minute and really hone in on that. But what I really liked about that is that idea of putting them first, because I've seen so many times where if April's the dealer in this panel, I'm going to tell her how wrong she is. Or sometimes I hear people on stage talking how, I don't want to use the word stupid, but man, dealers just aren't paying attention and it's the dealer's fault. And, look at this, I did this, you're screwing it up. And I find that offensive. I find it really offensive. And I've mentioned it a couple times at conferences where I say, hey, this is not dealer bashing, because some people really do. I know what their intentions are, but they come across as dealer bashing. And that's what I really do like about your approach, Hannah, is it's always about serving, yeah, your product could be great, but if it's not, it's, well, you could try this, but you could also try that. It's that idea of I'm here to help, because it's a very complex business. Everybody's business is very complex. And have somebody from the outside telling you how to run your business, me telling Laurie how to run her business, you're a little bit, I don't think you really should be telling me that. So I really do like that approach. And I agree with you. Everyone on this call April, as dealer as well, that idea of serving the customer, serving the employees, doing what's best for everyone. So April, for you, what are you seeing, right, from dealers right now? Inventory is an issue. Yes, we want to keep marketing. I was talking with some salespeople the other day, and there is that frustration of, talking to customers and saying, well, we're pre-sold for the next 3 months and you can have something in, a few months, and maybe you can order, or maybe you can't, or I just don't have anything to sell. What's going on the front lines? How are you guys keeping spirits up, so to speak, and really keeping that positive attitude when you don't know what the manufacturer is going to do tomorrow, when inventory will release? There's a lot of challenges. It hasn't eased up.
Yeah.
So what's going on out in the front lines?
Well, you have to think outside the box first and foremost. But we have multiple dealers, and so what I've really watched is kind of this ebb and flow happening, where one dealer will have inventory 1 month, another dealer will have inventory the next month, and so it's highs and lows for each of these stores. But taking the opportunity to make sure when these lows happen, it is really important that we keep their head in the game. So I always have the analogy of sports when we start talking about training, because I think what's happening over the summer as we're getting ready to get into football, they don't just say, hey, it's the off season, there's nothing going on, we're just going to sit back and relax. No, this is the time that we make sure that we'll be ready when the game comes. So I think training is one of the best ways that you can ultimately spend your free time right now. If you don't have a car to sell, you don't have somebody in front of you, what are you doing to hone your skills? All of this time, this education I'm talking about, now's the time. Now is the time to educate yourself. If you don't know all these data points, like Sarah said, you need to know how to look at your social stats. You need to know how to look at your website stats. You need to look at your Google business profile stats, which are different than your website stats, because some of that data is housed before they get to your website, which means you need to look at that separately. All these different pinpoints. Well, now's a good time to be doing education, and you can make education fun. So we've done like fun spiffs, right? Just to say, hey, you don't have an opportunity to make money today selling a car. Can I give you a $500 spiff for the person who can, do this the best or do that the best? Or sometimes it's just, who threw a paper airplane the furthest today, kind of thing. Like it's crazy, but it's keeping everybody engaged and doing something that is going to help benefit them, because the second you let people sit, then the negativity can seep in. And once the negativity seeps in, when it's time to play the game, you will fail. You will absolutely fail, because you have this mindset that you're going to fail, then you will fail. And if you've spent time just thinking that's what's going to happen, then that's what will happen. So I think just staying busy is the most important thing that everybody can do right now, to make sure that they're good to go. But I also am taking this opportunity to say, hey, can we finally take fixed ops and sales and be friends, right? Can we kind of meet these two spaces that have always been combative and say, hey, no, this is one circle. It's not two half circles disconnected, that sort of thing. So I think now is just a really good time to build foundation, whether you're talking marketing, which I wholly believe in. Build your foundation right now, but build your foundation in your culture, build your foundation in your training, build a nice solid foundation so that as inventory comes back, we're all ready to build.
I think that's so smart, because the other theme I'm hearing majorly for this next year, and you guys probably are too, is retention. It's going to matter for OEM co-op dollars. It's going to matter for CSI scores. It's going to matter what you do, what partnerships you get, what money you get back. So I think it's also a really, really great time to focus on how can we create better retention strategies as well.
Well, so let's talk about that, because I agree. As April was talking, we've worked with our clients on, getting inventory, right? And a lot of it is, how aggressive does the dealer want to be to go out and get, used inventory to add to their pool. And we've worked on some strategies to, basically go fishing in service, and not just who's there today, but going backwards and saying, well, who's been in our service drive for the last 3 months? And what if we just all called them up or looked at all the inventory and said, well, which cars do we want? And then call them up and say, hey, would you sell it to us? So to April's point is that we can't just because we don't have tons of inventory doesn't mean we can't go get inventory. And more importantly, to what April said, which I loved, was this idea of this is the time to train or teach them phone skills. If people aren't walking in the door, well, then, hey, what are you doing to set your own appointments? What are we doing in service to build up and this idea of retention? So talk to me, all of you. Like retention, it's an easy word. Everybody talks about it. We should retain. We got to retain. What are you seeing in terms of actual processes and things that people are doing to retain or to deliver great experience, or even just from a marketing perspective, proactively going out to get the service customer back in, finding out, asking them, I can't remember, I think it was Hannah who said, asking them what's important. Just like we ask what's important to the dealer, are we spending time asking what's important to our customer? We could think it's important and they're thinking this is stupid, or vice versa. So talk to me about some retention strategies that you guys are using or seeing that are really generating some great results.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great, I have a couple of different service clients. And I'll tell you what, this is actually I'll tell you a personal story that they could have done much better. I went to my local dealership the other day. They said, come in at 8:30. I was there at 8:30. They didn't even start having their service advisors come out till 9. So I was there on time and waited half an hour before anyone even came out to ask me about my car. The service advisors come out. They don't have enough now for the buildup of the people that are there. They finally get to my car about 9:15. By this point, I'm super ticked off because I was there on time. I've been waiting 45 minutes. They tell me it's going to be at least an hour and a half, where over the phone they had told me 45 minutes. So I have a call at 10. And I said, well, I have a call at 10. It sounds like you guys aren't going to be done. And then the advisor got angry with me because I had scheduled a call at 10. So that's a great example of a way not to retain a customer.
Right.
But, I think it just shows there's just some really simple things we can do as an industry. Traver Connect is one of my clients right now, and they talk about phone skills, greeting someone the moment they come in the door, even if you can't get to them right away, go tell them what's going on. Transparency. This is how long it's going to take. If it's going to take a little longer, no one likes to hear that, but they'd rather hear that than sit for the next half hour not knowing anything. So, I mean, some of the stuff I'm seeing is just really simple customer service that, back to April's point, could be trained on during this time. Like, let's tighten up those processes during this time in the service drive. And I think Bob from Traver was telling me there's some really hard numbers for co-op dollars. I think you have to have, something like 65% retention the first year. April, let me know if I'm doing these numbers right. And then like 85%, or maybe it was 85% to begin, but 65% overall. So the dealers are really trying to hit some really hard numbers. Retention isn't just this sort of, like you said, sweet word, like, let's just make our customers happy. There's some hard numbers they actually need to hit to get co-op dollars back.
But to your point is, we all, from the marketing side here, or products or whatever, we can do everything. We can tell everybody how great it is, but if we're not delivering it in the day-to-day when someone gets there, then there is that disconnect of, well, what someone on the phone said and what reality happens, or how they greet, or things like that. So Sarah, what are we doing for some retention campaigns, or even just testimonial campaigns, for our clients?
I mean, I think the first thing, even before you go and talk about campaigns, is the level of customer service that you give our dealers. The importance of customer service, I feel like, is lost sometimes amongst the industry. Like, Glenn, you can relate to this. I've been working in the restaurant industry for 11 years, and customer service is the complete name of the game. And you realize who is skilled in customer service and who has been trained in customer service and who hasn't, and talking to people like people. It's like, it's one thing to talk to somebody like you're in a business, but you're also talking to people who have lives and who have other things going on. So just being totally honest and relatable with them, and then translating that into your marketing and saying, well, what's important to you? What are your goals right now at the dealership, and how can we translate that as part of your marketing team into your different campaign strategies?
Yeah, I see. I like that, because you're asking them, what can you deliver? Like, what can you really deliver? And then I'll market it versus let's come up with something fancy and then we're going to disappoint. And I don't think we want to. So Hannah, from you, because your company is so driven to that, have you seen, I touched on a little earlier, have you seen I want to say that reviews and testimonials, or that it's sort of taken for granted now, or it doesn't seem to be as important to dealerships or businesses? Or am I just missing completely?
I don't know if I'd say you're missing completely, but I definitely would say it is on the opposite side of the scale. There's a huge uptick, specifically because of the pandemic. The service department was holding up the dealership for a lot of different companies because people couldn't buy cars. There wasn't inventory, but guess what? They needed to make sure that their car could run, especially in places like Chicago, New York, where you guys are, San Francisco. When people didn't want to take public transit anymore, number one important thing they needed was a reliable source of transportation to and from. So they're going to get that car worked on. So taking money and reallocating it from the sales side of the house to the back of the service, the back of the house, we found that to be really successful. When I say reallocate the money, and April can speak to this in particular, it's actually something we did together. We did something as simple as just build out a Google business profile for her service department. And within the course of 2 months, she got over 416 5-star reviews. She had an uptick of I don't know, April, what was it, 50% of new people coming in because they could find her. So not only was she gaining retention, but she was stealing competition from local people like Pep Boys, not even just other dealerships. But she was taking that market share from people who weren't optimizing and taking a page out of playbook of Google. And we're talking dollars to cents. It wasn't a huge investment. It was just a matter of what you guys were saying, taking the time to train, taking the time to learn a new skill,
right,
taking the time to look at something just a little bit differently and not forget about it. And because of that, April, you can share your numbers, but how well, at least at the Kia service department, it's insane. Even when I went to visit you in person, there was over a 3-hour wait of cars coming in.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's one of those things that even before the pandemic, I knew that the Google business profile was transitioning and starting to become, in my mind, number one for SEO. Everyone was still focused on the website SEO and building out things within the site. But I realized very quickly that there were these other spots, and that being one of the absolute biggest ones, that if you were not optimizing that, you were already missing the boat, and you could not compete against the other companies that were the Pep Boys and such of the universe. But getting the buy-in on stuff like that, because again, it goes back to, well, how does that sell me a car? How does that get a car in my service drive? People don't understand the foundation stuff that actually does. And even now, right? If we walked into the service drive and said, did you realize your Google business profile is probably what accounted for this much of your uptick? They would be like, no, that's not possible, right? They can't correlate those two things, but that's okay. You just have to push through and get it done and have somebody you need one person who believes, that's it. One person who believes, says yes, and then you just do it. But the thing that works really well with Hannah's company is that they create the consistency that's needed. Because if you just build it, that's one thing. But if you just continue to put stuff into it day to day, that's where you get this going on, right? Otherwise you just go like this and then you plateau because Google starts to say, well, wait a minute, you were cool for a second, but now you're not so cool because there's no consistency there. So, that's to what Hannah,
and that's what Hannah, what I liked about what she said as well was it's that idea of we don't forget about it. And that's what I was touching base on or alluding to earlier is we have a tendency of we go to a conference or Google's focusing on Google business profile and then everybody's focusing on that until the next big thing. And now we're all focused on that, but we forgot about the reviews and we forgot about the profile. It seems like we have a tendency, instead of like your analogy of stacking, It's we do one and then push it aside, and then we do one and we push it aside, and we do them all well in the moment.
Bingo.
But what we're not doing is adding to it where, no, this is part of our process now. We ask everybody for a review, and we use this technology. It becomes, but that goes back to the training, and it goes back to what we were talking about is like, do you even have all of your processes documented? So we know what we're adding on and building on, or is it just, well, we'll do it if they remember, or if someone in a meeting reminds you, or worse, you pay me. And if you don't pay me or spiff me to do it, then I'm not really going to do it.
Yep. That's 100% the truth. I do want to point one thing out about retention that I'm really, really genuinely fearful of. I still think, as we sit here today, that the number one problem with retention is fear of dealers to hold people accountable right now, because it's so hard to get employees. It's really hard. So, if you don't have, like Sarah said, that customer service in your soul, if that's not who you are, then these people right now feel like, well, it doesn't matter. What are they going to do? Fire me? So there's an attitude problem due to the lack of accountability, of fear of people leaving. Like, I have heard more in the last 6 months, well, you give me this or I quit right now. And it's just, it's a not a good feeling when that's happening. But even more so on the sales side that I'm really scared of is when inventory levels back out and people have to actually sell, right? You actually have to sell.
Right.
The grass is greener mentality is going to set in real quick, and we're going to see just a lot of movement. And so I don't think that no matter how good your culture is right now, I don't know that we can fully stop that. I think all we can really do is prepare for it, because I think it's going to happen whether we want it to or not.
Well, see, I'll push back a little on that, just because I think, well, I will say, yes, I will agree for the majority. I think really good operators aren't falling into that because they have a structure. They have training. They said, I'll go down the street and find Sarah, who works at hospitality, and I'll train them. And guess what? Within 2 months, they'll be it. So I don't need to be held hostage. But to your point, if I don't have that training, if I don't have that belief that I can take anybody and in 3 months, teach them how to sell cars, 2 months, teach them how to sell cars, how to write service, how to do whatever, work in the BDC. If you don't have that mentality of, I will train somebody, then you're right. Then you are held hostage. And if people are falling into the, well, if you don't give me this, then I'm going to quit. I'll be like, okay, go quit, like go somewhere else, because then you're starting to foster the wrong culture. You're fostering a culture of, you need me.
Yes.
And that's a horrible place to be as a leader of a business.
Absolutely.
Well, and I'll tell you, going back to that service example, when I got to talking about him, I said, so I'm actually in the automotive industry. I'm just so interested. Like, what do you think it is that could help you with customer service and that kind of thing? And he was like, look, lady, I don't get paid enough to handle this right now. I mean, so you've got, this is a true story that happened to me. I wanted to write an article about it. Like, guys, this is real. This happened to me when I went into a dealership. So I think that is this permeated culture is happening right now. And so if you don't get a handle on it right now, it's going to go throughout your entire
and to April's point, everybody's making money right now. And so there are people, depending on your pay plan, there are some people who are making, the equivalent of what it used to take them 15, 18 cars on 8 cars. And so when all of a sudden that compensation goes down, or the ability to, where you're going to have to split deals, or you're going to have to work a little bit harder to generate that revenue, I personally think that's going to be a problem. I think coming down the road, and this is where marketing comes in, is the fact of thinking 2 years down the road, when all of a sudden, remember, we haven't had a ton of new cars. So what happens 4 years from now? That means the newer used car market's going to diminish. So more to April's point is, you better be thinking about service, because people are going to have to hold on to their cars a little longer. That means you're going to need techs who can work on older cars, because, we just don't have the new cars out there now that are going to come down, let alone, we don't even want to get down the rabbit hole of what people have had to pay for cars right now.
Yep.
That all of a sudden 3 years from now, when they come back and go, oh my God, my car's lost all this equity, I'm underwater, there's a lot of things, but I keep hearing from all of you this idea of planning down the road. So let me just pivot to something else, seeing that you guys are going to be at a conference. There's always this, and April, I'm really curious from a dealer perspective. Now, you work in a company that really allows you to get out and participate. What is the hesitation of the dealer community? Why don't more people go to conferences, or why don't they send more people? Because if you think, let's say for round numbers, there's 15,000 franchise. We'll just do franchise. And there's probably 4 or 5 people in every single dealership that should be going out to these to get education. So now we're talking about 75,000, and we don't see that, so what's the hesitation? What's the obstacle that all of us who are, having conferences need to address to get more people to show up?
I think it just really boils down to, you're not making money for me when you're at a conference. And so I think that's like, you have to understand the investment that a conference actually is, which is, okay, so you're not in the store selling cars for 2 or 3 days, but in that 2 or 3 days, you're getting knowledge that could give me a 10% lift every single month for who knows how long, because of the knowledge that you bring back, and understand the investment that a conference actually is. But I think that unfortunately, most dealers look at it as, oh, I'm just sending you on a vacation, or I'm just
right.
It's this old school mentality of not understanding that there's really a purpose to going and being educated. But I think there's also the wrong people go a lot of times. So I think there's also the people that are sent to the conferences are not necessarily the person that should be there. There should be, somebody, a decision maker, and then somebody from both sides of the house in fixed ops and in sales. And all 3 of those people should be going and having a strategy on what they're going to look at, what education they want to get out of it, where do they feel they're most lacking. Like anything else, you get out what you put in. And so early on, when I said I went to conferences and I learned, I didn't know anybody. I wasn't speaking. I wasn't talking to you all while I was there. I was taking the book and going through and saying, where do I need to learn? What do I want to accomplish? And I had a schedule planned well in advance of, here's what I'm going to do while I'm there. And then I'm going to ask questions. And so I think having a game plan and having people go and understanding it truly is an investment in education to increase your business is worth the 3 days that these people are gone.
Yeah.
But you need to have an April, right? You need to have an April. You have to have someone who's that motivated.
Well, I think that, but what you could do, it may not have to necessarily be the April. What we do at PCG is, if Sarah wants to go to a conference, she comes to me and says, I want to go to New York for this social media conference. I have no problem. But part of the deal is she comes back and teaches the company what she learned, what was good, what was bad. So I think dealers, I always joke about that whole, well, you're out of the store. I'm just like, well, what happens if I get the stomach flu and I'm out sick for 3 days?
We don't. You
I know.
This is what we do.
Yeah, exactly. But the point is that if you're going to send someone, and so again, for the dealers listening, send people, but demand that they come back and educate. Go through, to April's point, go through the list of all the classes and say, what are we trying to accomplish? I hear dealers do that more when they're looking for products. Like when they go to NADA, they're going, I'm going to go find, I had a dealer last year. He was saying, I'm going to find a car wash. And so he looked at all the vendors and he made appointments with all of them. That was their mission. Or I'm getting a new CRM, so it's that idea of taking that same focus that you would have for looking for a new product, a new CRM, a new website provider, something, and then doing that for education as well. No, we're going to go figure out social media, but then also asking people, who out of these 6 speakers should I see? Because again, a dealer could go sit in April's session, go sit in Sarah's session, and go sit in Hannah's section, and all 3 of you are telling them completely different things. And the poor person is coming out even more confused than when they went in. And so I think it's really guiding that and helping dealers out. And we all can do that. I have people calling me up saying, should I see this person? Should I not see this person? I'm like, no, that's the one you need to go see based on what you're trying to learn and what you're trying to accomplish. So, well, what about all the other three? Well, you've been at conferences enough. What are you hearing from why people don't go? I got April vomiting into a basket because even if she has the flu, she's not going. What are you guys hearing?
I'll tell you one thing I hear a ton, and they're not wrong. If you have a superstar, they're afraid to send him or her because they're afraid they'll be poached. So I hear that a lot. Like if you've got someone that's there that's looking at all the last sessions, and we hear that a lot in speaking too, right, guys? I mean, I've had people, I'm on the PR side, so I've actually had companies say, we don't want this person to be a speaker, or we don't want them to be interviewed in this article because they're scared to death their best employees will be taken from them. And like I said, they're not wrong. Like that happens. I mean, just look at Erica and Tiffany Wells, look at her meteoric rise. I mean, I think when you find someone who's really good at what they do and really passionate, it's scary for leaders to send them, but that is what's going to inspire those folks. So it's almost like if you don't send them, you're going to lose them anyway. So just get on, hold on to them while you can. And yeah, they may move on because they're pretty incredible, but don't hold them back because you're afraid that they're influential and charismatic and amazing.
No, I think it's the education. And I think, April said it, is that you have to have your leadership has to have a desire to constantly get better. And so that, a lot of dealers have 20 groups, so they have circles of people that they can rely on. One of the other things that I've been, watching over the years, at least at our conferences, are people, one, Sarah stepping up now and going out and speak, and, very excited for that. But more importantly, you see people who, like April, in the dealership now building her own 20 group of people that she can rely on and call up and say, what are you doing over there marketing? What are you doing in your deal? My dealer wants me to do it at every level, right? So the fixed ops created, and then even general sales managers or general managers are reaching out and connecting and building their own network of people or their own version of a 20 group. And you're not going to find that only sitting in your dealership or only going to a 20 group that's like-minded dealers. And, it is that ability to branch out, to surround yourself and connect with more people. I only think you're going to get better is if you really push on that and really try to dive in and be, getting back to your guys' panel, to sit in front of you, listen to what you say, and then connect with you and ask questions. I mean, how valuable is the information that you're going to share? But more importantly, that idea of, hey, you can call me anytime. That's where I think a lot of that, the people only look at, well, it's a vacation, or, oh, you're not working hard. Well, get them to work hard, get them to come back and report. But sitting in front of 4 people like you, I mean, the wealth of information you're going to get, you should not be skipping this. So get tickets, come see them. Yeah.
Yeah, Glenn.
All right. So all right. So as we wrap up, I always ask people a couple questions that are off the beaten path, so to speak, just to have some fun at the end. So since we have 4, I will ask you all the same question, and then you can give me your versions of it. So I always like asking this question, and people who've heard the podcast know I always like asking this one. So it's a 2-part question. I'm fascinated, mostly because my kids are this age now, but I'm fascinated at that 15, 16-year-old brain. So some of you the gap is a little closer. Me, the gap is way farther away. Meaning, if you're looking backwards from where you are now to your 16-year-old self, what's the trait that's consistent from then to now? That's the first part. Second part is 16-year-old Hannah looking at Hannah today. What would she be most surprised about? So for all of you looking at your 16-year-old self, looking at you now, what would they go, what? Never would have thought about that. So who wants to go first?
I think Hannah or Sarah should. April and I have been dominating the discussion.
All right, Sarah, 16-year-old Sarah. What's the trait that's consistent with Sarah today?
I definitely think the trait that's most consistent is just wanting to succeed. And wanting to build a career for myself. I've known I wanted to do that since even before I was 16. I didn't know what I wanted to do or how I was going to do it. And even sometimes I still think that because there's just so much longer to go for me. But that would definitely be the most consistent. And then the second part of that question, what I would be most surprised of would probably be my confidence. Like if you were to tell 16-year-old me that I would speak in front of people and I'd be leading teams, I'd be like, you are literally out of your mind. Like there's absolutely no way. That's not who you are as a person, but I've just really grown in that direction, which I'm also super proud of.
That's great. Great. And I love the fact that you use the word career versus job. So that also tells you where your brain's at. Hannah.
Sure thing. So the first thing that came to mind when you said, what's the most consistent trait? Everyone on this call knows me professionally and personally, but even before you guys knew me in the automotive world, I've been hosting parties and making people drinks and catering to all family affairs at my house for as long as I can remember. If any of you guys know me, I love wining, I love dining. It's really fun, and I'm so glad I still have the opportunity to do it professionally. So I've been doing that my entire life. I don't think I'll be stopping anytime soon. Love a good party. The thing that I'm most surprised about is probably just like the digital component of my life. I always knew I wanted to be in marketing, but I even remember when I heard about what a first email campaign was versus I think I have 2 or 3 just in the background going out to 20,000 people. So I just didn't realize the scale at which it could grow when I kind of got started post college, and how much could be right at my fingertips. Like right now we're all remote. So I'm really surprised at how far this has come and how much I've been able to pick up and just learn when this was absolutely not my degree. This was absolutely not where I kind of thought my career would be headed, at least this digitally far to the left.
Great. April, what about you? What's the consistent trait in your life? And then what would 16-year-old April be most stunned?
Probably the most consistent thing is I've always worked really hard. I've always had a really strong work ethic. I get that from my dad. And I've always made fun of myself. Like I've never had an issue with kind of being that person. I've always been a chameleon. I can talk to kind of anybody. So that part's always been consistent. The thing that I would be most surprised about, I knew in high school, I graduated early, that I was going to go into some sort of business, but I think I would be really surprised if I said, hey, I'd be spending 25 years in automotive and where I would be at this point. I don't think I would have thought car sales and that sort of thing was the path that I was going to go in business at 16.
Great. All right. Laurie.
I love this question. It's so good. I actually have a 14 and 16-year-old right now. So I'm very, very immersed in the teen brain right now.
Yes.
16, let's see. I probably just have always loved connecting people. Like I've always really, really loved having connections with people. And that has not wavered through my decades of business. But the thing that'd be really surprising, I don't even know if you guys know this, I used to be really shy. So at 15 and 16, I was like super, super shy, not very sure of myself. So I think I would be shocked to see how extroverted I am today. Like I feel like I can talk to anybody, feel comfortable in any group, can handle myself in any situation. And I think I never at 16 would have thought that.
Well, those are fantastic. So I hear a lot about that. You're either very shy, now you're extroverted, but the work ethic, all of you have a hard work ethic. I mean, you guys all work very, very hard. You really care about your friends, which is always really exciting, the way you defend each other and support each other. And, I think that's incredibly valuable. And that just also means what you do to take care of your customers. So that's fantastic as well. So before we go, tell me, all of you can just roll through quick, start with you, Sarah, then we'll go Hannah and April and Laurie. Where can listeners connect with you? Where can they find you on social media? Where can they connect with you? Because everyone who's listening, these are people that you should be connected with, both as people and professionals. So Sarah, where can they find you?
Yes, the best place to find me is on LinkedIn. Everyone who adds me on LinkedIn is always like, every time I log on to LinkedIn, I'm seeing your face. So I like to post a lot of articles. You know, PCG likes to share a lot of our content. I am always sharing and posting, and going back to the education piece, just wanting to educate as much as possible. So LinkedIn is definitely the best spot.
Great. Hannah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not too hard to find on LinkedIn either. It's just Anna Lifson. I've claimed the URL. So please do connect with me. I'm there. If not every day, every other day, feel free to shoot me a message. I'll get back to you as long as it doesn't look like spam.
Oh, you mean there's spam on LinkedIn?
What?
What?
Crazy.
Oh my goodness.
Very true.
April.
Same thing, April Simmons on LinkedIn, best place to find me, collaborate. It's one of my favorite places to get education and ask questions of other people. So that's April Simmons, LinkedIn.
All right, great.
I mean, I'm going to round it out, LinkedIn as well. But I do have a question for you, Glenn. I know we're finishing up. What is your answer to the 16-year-old brain? Right?
I was wondering that too.
Let's finish it up with Glenn's.
Oh, I would say along the lines of April's work. I've been working since, 12, 11, paper routes, lemonade stands, always hustled to make money. So I've always worked, always had 2 jobs. When I went to actually only have 1 job, I was, whoa, I don't have to work 2 jobs anymore. This is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
I think the thing that would be most, I think probably owning a company, because I always work behind the scenes for people. I still think I sort of do that now. I've been forced to the front, but I not owning it, I would always work for someone else and build things. That was always that. But yeah, I think it would be that. Not speaking. I mean, the speaking part, I wanted to be an actor when I was little. I wanted to be on TV. But we didn't get that far yet. So but we do
Yet.
that. So yeah, but we'll do that. So all right. So everyone, make sure those of you that are going to Digital Dealer Wednesday, what is it, the 12th? Is that what the date is?
Our session, I think we're Thursday the 13th, actually. Is that
Thursday
right, girls?
the 13th at, okay. So go to Digital Dealer, go find their session, make sure you're going to attend. I'm going to be there as well. So come say hello to me as well. All of you who are listening, you know the drill. Make sure that you subscribe. Please share this out. There has to be someone in your network that will benefit from the discussion we just had today. So please make sure you share it out. Don't forget to rate the the podcast, so we know how important that is to get other people to hear about the podcast. We love that. We also really do appreciate the fact that you spend some time with us. There are millions of places for you to consume content, but the fact that you spent time with myself and these 4 powerhouse individuals, it's amazing. We appreciate it. We thank you so much. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Ladies, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. Thank you, Sarah, for steamrolling me into this, because this was a great conversation.
Anytime.
Anytime. All right, guys. See ya.
Thank you.